Welcome back to USCFootball.com, Peristyle Podcast, Inside Troy on YouTube, all of the above. I am your host, Chris Trevino, joined by Connor Morrissette, a.k.a. Triple Double. We are doing our spring positional previews, and we are rounding out the offense, Connor, with the big boys in the trenches on the offensive line. You seemed really excited to talk O-line today.
I am very excited. My first impression of this group, I'm jumping the gun. You usually say, what's your first impression?
He's ready. Go. Let's go.
You know how Gerard talks about the barometer of the USC recruiting classes? Yes. What specific recruit will be the barometer? Is it going well? Is it going not well? The offensive line, like for most teams, but I think specifically for USC this upcoming season, is going to be the barometer for the USC season. If USC gets offensive line play like they did in Lincoln Riley's first season with the Trojans, I think the team has potential to be pretty good. If it looks like Caleb Williams' second year from 2 seasons ago or the beginning of last season, just a lot of moving pieces, and it takes the group a while to gel, then they won't be looking as hot. That's like most teams. I'm not exactly saying anything that hasn't been said before in football, but I think it's a very specific case with this USC offensive line because it's not like you have all these homegrown guys who are coming up through the ranks. It's some transfers. It's some homegrown guys who need to prove themselves. There are a lot of moving parts, and if it all comes together and looks good, USC should have a successful season. If not, I'm a little concerned.
I'm right there with you. I have some concern here with this position group. There are things to like, but you did lose a lot, and you lost an extra on top of that, which we'll get to in a second. So I think there's still work to be done with this room for sure. I still think they need help out of the transfer portal in the spring window. They were very not about it last year, and I after the spring window I said you need more guys, you need someone else, and they didn't do it, and I think they paid for that. So we're going to see if they're going to learn from this cycle, if they're going to go Chad Bowden and that front office, if they are going to look at bringing in more offensive line help after the spring window when they do their evaluations for spring camp. And we're going to try to do our evaluations right now. But let's look at what they are losing, and it's a lot. You got Jonah Monheim, your starting center, off to the NFL. You have Mason Murphy, your starting right tackle, out of here, out to Auburn. You have Amos Talele, who was a depth guy, off to Kansas State. You have Kalolo Ta'aga, who was a developing freshman offensive tackle, who I really liked, but he entered the transfer portal. He is off to Utah. You have Gino Quinones, who was one of your backup centers, interior offensive lineman, veteran, had some injury stuff, but he is off to Fresno State. And then the big one, Connor, is Emmanuel Pregnon, who was initially returning, not going to the NFL draft, returning to USC, played in the bowl game, and then decided to transfer at the last second and is now at Oregon. So that is a painful loss for USC on top of, the several guys that they already lost from their starting unit and their depth, the depth of their roster. So Emmanuel Pregnon is a rotten cherry on the tomato of their losses. So that is a interesting group.
Pregnon is certainly the worst loss, but he plays offensive guard. It's not something that will kill you. It's not like Elijah Page jump ship and, oh crap, you don't have a left tackle. It's not like Jacoby Lane left. It's not like Mekhi Lemon left. Like, you can overcome losing a guard even if he was a pretty good guard. So, yes, that stings. The fashion that it all went down stings. Losing him to Oregon stings. I get that, but I do think, looking positively here, if you said, like, our biggest loss is going to be a guard, that's not the end of the world. So, how does USC replace him? We'll get into that here in a second. It stings, but I do think they could have lost worse guys. So, maybe that doesn't make people feel better, but I think it should make you feel a little bit better. You can overcome a guard loss.
You can't overcome a guard loss, but I think just optically as a guy who started
not good
multiple
optics.
Years, you would rather have Emmanuel Pregnon.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Taking one of those things, you're so much better. But you're right, you can replace a guard, but it's going to take some work to do that. So let's look at some of the options to do so when we take a look at our returning group. You have the redshirt sophomore, Elijah Page, who will be your starting left tackle, was your starter last season. You have the junior, Alani Noah, who was your starting right guard last year. You have Senior Killian O'Connor, who was your backup center, starting center for the Las Vegas Bowl. He is now on scholarship, so congrats to him as a former walk-on getting that scholarship. You have sophomore Tobias Raymond, redshirt sophomore Tobias Raymond, who is a candidate to start at right tackle. You have the redshirt sophomore Micah Buenuelos. You have redshirt freshman Justin Taunau, who was a big stock mover after being thrown in to left tackle in the Las Vegas Bowl. You have redshirt freshman Makai Sena. You have redshirt freshman Hayden Treater. And then you have the junior Erwin Taomi, a JUCO pickup from the fall last year, a super late pickup who we didn't really see play at all in 2012, maybe some special team stuff. But that is your returning bunch. A lot of different names and options and grades, but the big ones, obviously, Elijah Page and Alani Noah back as two starting holes filled on your unit.
Those guys coming back, it's huge. USC, that 2023 recruiting class that was so highly ranked, so many of those guys have left. The fact that you have two foundational pieces on your offensive line from that class is very significant. It starts with Page at left tackle. He didn't have the greatest start to last season, got benched against Michigan, but guess what? He has a high ceiling, and he got better as the year went on. I think he's a very solid left tackle and a potentially great left tackle in the Big Ten. So that's huge that you have that position solidified. You don't have to move Jonah Monheim. You don't have to get someone from the portal. He's a guy who's coming back who at one point, Chris, we were hearing, is he going to come back? There were some portal rumors, but he's in the fold. He's locked in. That's huge. And Alani Noah, there have been some up and down moments with him, but I feel pretty good about him coming back too. He's a grinder. He's a guy who wasn't the most highly ranked recruit coming out of high school, but remember, he started that first game as a true freshman, put himself on the map immediately. He's a competitor. He's a gamer. And in year 3, I think he has a real chance to separate and become an elite guard. So I like those two pieces a lot. The rest of the line, though, it's going to look a little different.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love those two pieces, especially Elijah Page. I think he has potential to be a really, really good, one of the best tackles in the Big Ten moving forward, and just a monster of a human being.
He's a big dude.
As that 6'7", 320 pounds. He looks like a future first round pick kind of guy. Now you have to kind of play like that, and we saw signs of that last season. And Alani Noah, had some struggles his first year. Had some personal stuff off the field that was kind of, distracting for him in his development. And yeah, he had some bad moments last year as a first-year starter, but he was a first-year starter. And I think you saw that get better as the time went out. It still wasn't what you need. You still need more growth from him. So that's why this season is really huge for him, and this spring camp specifically for him. But if you have those two pieces that were starters last year, I think you're really happy about that. But now, as you said, a lot of different moving parts. You got to find pieces there, and I think the one guy who people are pointing at, Tobias Raymond, is a guy who is he going to start in 2025? Started in that Las Vegas Bowl at right tackle because Mason Murphy was off to the transfer portal, now at Auburn. Tobias Raymond is a guy we've talked about a lot as a developmental guy. When is his time? Connor, I feel like 2025 is his best time as any right now because they need a right tackle. They have holes to fill. 6'7", 320 pounds, big boy. He's a guy who's put on a lot of weight since he arrived as a 3-star in 2023 class. So, yeah, if you're talking about development with your offensive line, now's the time to show it, and 2025 would be a big chance to show it for Tobias Raymond.
What he does next season will be very interesting because he's a guy who will be evaluated in spring camp, and if USC likes him as the starting right tackle, I still could see them adding a tackle, but it would be a depth piece. It would maybe be a younger player, someone who you don't need to rely on right away. If he has an up and down spring and they're not sure, you might see USC get a plug-and-play starter. And, Chris, we haven't even talked about some other names who might be in that right tackle battle, so that's going to be coming up when we talk about some of the new faces. But he played right tackle in the bowl game. Raymond did. He is that logical successor for Mason Murphy to be the starting right tackle. He was sort of the 6th offensive lineman last season. We saw when Page got benched that inserted Raymond in at right tackle as Murphy moved over to left tackle. So he's in the mix. He got close to playing a bigger role last season. If there was an injury last year, he would have gone in, and we saw that happen in the Las Vegas Bowl. So he's trending in the right direction, but there's a difference between trending in the right direction and being a reliable starter for a Big Ten team. And that's sort of that last piece of development that Raymond will need to have happen here in the spring. If it does, great. If it doesn't, we could see USC add another body, someone to compete with him further. And if it really goes poorly in the spring, maybe that body is someone who comes in and is a plug-and-play guy. He doesn't even really need to necessarily compete.
That's a really good point by you in talking about this spring and how it's a big, everyone's it's kind of like a job interview for a lot of people. Like, hey, are we confident in you to hold down the spot, or do I need to go into the portal to fill that spot? Because we're not messing around. We can't go with question marks or uncertainty. We need guys who we know will be dependable throughout the season, because we need a big season. We can't win 7 games. We can't win 8 games. We need to win 10 games. We need to be in position to win double-digit games. So if Tobias Raymond isn't the answer in spring, then you're right. It's probably going to be a discussion where, hey, we need to go find a tackle to start at right tackle, or start at guard. We could move somebody else to tackle, kind of that situation. So again, I hinted at the start, like I thought they needed to go get somebody after spring last year, and they didn't. And I feel like it cost them, because I know there wasn't like clear injuries, but I feel like if you would have gotten another talent acquisition, a guy who could start, your line would have been so much better. I feel like, yeah, Mason Murphy struggled and there were issues, but you could have gotten a right tackle and kicked him inside the guard where people thought he was a better fit at guard. Maybe you don't put so much pressure on Alani Noah early in the year. So I don't know. Hindsight's 20/20, but I still felt like they should have gotten someone in the spring. But now it's going to be an interesting question as we move through this spring camp. There's a lot of different names here, and I think one that jumps out to me is Justin Taunau, who was thrown into the fire for the Las Vegas Bowl at left tackle because you lost Elijah Page virtually the entire game. I think it was the first series that he got hurt with that ankle injury. And then Justin, true freshman, has not played at all, going up against Texas A&M. Again, not their full defense, but still, that is a tough challenge for anybody. And I thought he played well, and now he's got some momentum and he's got some stock rising. And maybe he's the swing tackle for next season, or maybe he's going to compete for right tackle with Tobias Raymond. I think that's a legitimate battle going on if he's ready to be there and, build off what he did in the Las Vegas Bowl.
That's a really good point. Where Tau Anu'u lines up will be very interesting, because I think right now he's the backup left tackle, and ideally you don't really have him in that right tackle mix. But if he's really good, he's gonna push for a job, and he can help, then of course he'll play. In the coach's eyes, I'd imagine Raymond being older and DJ Wingfield, a transfer who we think will probably play right guard but has some right tackle experience, like those guys, the coaching staff probably hopes are more ready. It's sort of like the Jaden Mayava thing. If he's not your quarterback, then what does that say about your development? Like Tobias Raymond's been in the system now for multiple years. It's his time at right tackle, and maybe Wingfield is that backup, and he'll be the right guard. Like in an ideal world, I think Taunu is that swing tackle, but you don't want to see your swing tackle a bunch, and you want him to be the backup left tackle. I don't think him playing next season would necessarily be a good sign, kind of like if a quarterback was able to beat out Mayava. If there's an injury, that totally changes the equation, or if he just comes out and dominates and just has this huge offseason, then of course we would look at it differently. But I think the succession plan right now, if you were talking to Zach Hansen, talking to Lincoln Riley, talking to other coaches, this next season we'll have Tawanu'u play that Raymond role where if we need a tackle to come in, he can, but ideally he's going to be that left tackle backup. And if Elijah Page has the season we think he's going to have, he maybe goes off to the NFL, and then Tawanu'u steps in for him the year after that.
Offensive line, interesting, because we have a lot of names to talk about and kind of mention here. So let's just throw the new faces in there as well, because, we keep circling back to this mysterious DJ Wingfield, but you know who he is. But USC did have 2 big transfer pickups for the offensive line, one being the senior DJ Wingfield out of Purdue, 6'4", 320 pounds, 12 starts at right guard last season, but also has right tackle experience. And then another big one, you have the 6th-year senior Jay Henry Reed, a.k.a. the Big
General.
General, out of Syracuse. Connor's neck of the woods, 6'3", 305 pounds, 26 starts in the last 26 games over his 2 years with the Orange. I think I said that weird. He started 25 games over the last 2 seasons for Syracuse. So there's your replacement in the middle for Jonah Monheim at center, and a guy who, no offense to Jonah Monheim, guy who's played center in college before, Jonah taking it over for the first time last season. And in addition to that, you have 4 true freshmen. All your offensive line freshmen you signed in 2025 are joining the program as well. Willie Washer, 6'2", 300 pounds, number 85 interior offensive line, 3-star, will play center. Elijah Vacona, 6'8", 360 pounds. No, I did not misspeak. 6'8", 360 pounds, number 89 overall offensive tackle, 3-star as well. Alex Payne, 6'5", 270-pound tackle out of Georgia, number 133 overall, the number 17 offensive tackle, 6'7". And then you have Aaron Dunn, 6'7", 290 pounds, number 172 overall, the number 20 offensive tackle in the class. Payne and Dunn, both consensus 4-star offensive tackles, which was a big, huge win for USC in getting those guys done. A flip from Utah, and Alex Payne, a flip from UNC. So having 2 4-star offensive tackles on campus early is massive for USC. And just having all those offensive linemen on campus early for USC is big. But we'll focus right now on Reed and Wingfield because those are 2 guys we project to be in that starting lineup, Connor.
Reed, plug and play at center.
Yep.
Not even a debate.
Let's not even talk about him, no. But yeah, plug and play.
That's where he's going to be. Comes off of the last 2 seasons at Syracuse, and Syracuse, it's a lower level, the ACC. I think that's fair to say. But like they were a run and gun passing attack. Like they threw the ball all over the yard with Kyle McCord. He might have had the most yards, definitely. I think behind Cam Ward, and then. Nationally, I don't know who else was in front of him. They threw the ball a ton, so that makes you feel pretty good. I want to see what he looks like against some of these Big Ten defensive lines because I do think it's a step up. But I love his experience. I love that he's been around college football for such a long time, and he might be like 24 or 25 this season. And the more older guys you have with all that experience usually will help you out. So I like that a lot. And then Wingfield. It's very interesting with him, Chris, because at New Mexico, he was better he played right tackle and he just graded out a lot better. Whereas last year at Purdue at right guard, he didn't grade out as well. But Purdue was so bad last season that I don't really hold some of that bad grade against him. I read Antonio Morales' piece in The Athletic, which transfers did other staffs want, and Wingfield was a guy who some staffs were not happy to see go to USC because they really wanted him. I think he's going to be a pretty solid right guard addition for him, but there is a world where he plays right tackle if the staff wants to see something else, or if Tobias Raymond, doesn't pan out. So that'll be something interesting to watch where Wingfield lines up. But right now, I think the consensus is right guard for him.
Yeah, I have him plugged in as right guard as well, but I acknowledge O-line is like a puzzle piece, and you're just trying to find where the pieces go. And he absolutely Connor, would it be shocked if we come out and Wingfield is like the right tackle like all spring?
No, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And then maybe they say, hey, we'll just get another guard after the portal. It might be easier to get a guard out of the portal than a tackle. Wingfield is huge too, so you love that versatility. And I like too, he's not a left tackle, and they're not going to try to force him to play left tackle. You have your left tackle. Deciding between a guy playing right guard and right tackle is so much better than I think. Like if you didn't have a left tackle and you needed to pigeonhole him into being a left tackle, that's just not who he is. And he has experience at both spots. He was highly coveted out of the portal. Like if he is the right tackle, no, that wouldn't surprise me much at all.
Yeah, and just quickly on those freshmen, Dunn and Payne would be your choices to contribute early if they did. But again, it's so hard for offensive linemen to contribute year one in college. It's just so tough. So we'll see what kind of weight gain they have for in December. We'll see what they look like coming out of the tunnel. But Dunn and Payne, I would lean more towards Payne if I had to pick one to be a contributor this year. But maybe one of them cracks the 2 deep. We'll have to see. I don't think necessarily that's a great sign if one of them is cracking the 2 deep because, again, we would like to see them address some depth stuff with the transfer portal after the spring. But, again, you at least have stockpiled some tackle bodies. You have Page, you have Raymond, you have Tauna'u, you have Payne and Dunn here, and then Vicona, who is 6'8". I think he could actually kick inside to guard. I know it's a massive guard, but there's questions about his flexibility and able to handle pass rushers off the edge. So you might be able to protect him more on the interior. Willie Washer will be like a developmental center for you. You have Killian O'Connor, who will be your backup now that he's on scholarship, and which more solidifies his role as a backup. And then Vicona and Willie Washer will probably be clear red shirts, with Alex Payne and Aaron Dunn also in that same boat. But, one of them maybe will emerge and get some time and development. So we'll have to see on there. But Reed and Wingfield do help a lot. Reed being the plug-and-play guy. And Wingfield, he is the key to all this. Where is he going to play? We don't really know. Right now, we both have him at the guard spot, but very easily could be a right tackle. I want to circle back to some of the returning guys because there are some interesting names there. Does anyone jump out to you that we haven't mentioned before that could maybe help or contribute or make a jump? Or is it just a bunch of, guys we're not ready to see yet?
I lean towards the latter there. I have my depth chart, which we'll get to later, all written out here. And
he's ready. He's locked in. For
maybe Micah Benuelos would be someone who would make a move in the depth chart. I'm just confused with him, Chris, because he comes in and I thought he was a center. And then we watched that scrimmage last fall camp where we couldn't talk about it, but I think the statute of limitations is done on that. He was the backup left tackle. And it was like, huh? Like
everyone's looking at each other like,
yeah, like, do we have the numbers right? So that was bizarre. And to me, like, you need guard help. He has a guard body. If he's not a center because you have Killian O'Connor, Willie Washer, like, can he be moved for a third time? That seems weird, but you need guard help, and he seems like a guard to me. So I think he could potentially crack the two deep at guard, but then it's like, what are you doing? Where 1 year he's a center, 1 year he's the left tackle backup, and then now he's a guard. Like, I guess that makes sense, but does it make sense?
It doesn't really make sense. Yeah, he was recruited to play center, but played left tackle for high school. So when he came here, he was developing. He's had injury issues. I want to point that out too. He has battled.
First year.
It seems like he's always had his first years. He's had like a nagging injury that's kind of like cut into his time in the middle of the year. Then he comes back. Then he plays a little in practice and stuff, and then maybe gets another injury. So injuries have kind of sagged him down throughout his first few years. So I don't really know where he's going to play. If he's interior guy. I mean, Zach Hansen's taking over. Zach Hansen, who is a tackle by trade. We'll see what he thinks of Micah Benuelos as a potential tackle. So we'll see where he ends up in spring. But two guys that I look at as interesting guys are Erwin Taomi, the JUCO guy who we didn't see at all, but like they said, again, similar to Micah Benuelos, like this is a guy who could play tackle for us. But I looked at him, I was like, this guy screams interior. This guy screams guard. Like he looks like a guard, and he was the most developed looking out of any other guard. So I'm like, it makes sense, just put him at guard. So again, he's another one, like I don't really know where he's going to end up, but if I were on the coaching staff, I'm putting him at guard. Is he ready to help at all? Because they need more depth on the interior. And then the other one I'm going to mention really quick is Hayden Treater, who was one of my picks to like contribute year one. Came in at 6'6", 320 pounds. He came in ready-made size, but got snake bit by an injury. I believe it was a knee injury. Needed some sort of procedure on it, but he missed all of last year. So he's essentially coming in as a true freshman because didn't get to practice or do anything. So that holds him back a little bit. But just in terms of his size, I think he's a guy who we could see crack the two deep down the line. Potential to play either tackle or interior. I think he's going to start out on the interior where they need him more.
If Erwin Taomi takes a snap at one of the tackle spots, I'll give you $100. I don't see that happening. He is a guard. I know Josh Henson said he could do both.
That's why I said, oh, brother.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he looks like a guard.
Yeah.
Just play him at guard. Why are you trying to outsmart me? Just put him at guard.
Mm-hmm. I do think, though, Chris, like they're just very, very lean at guard. Mm-hmm. And on my depth chart, like you have Alani Noah at one of them, DJ Wingfield at the other, and then I feel like they're each other's backups. I don't know if one of them got hurt, who you feel good about bringing in. Like it was going to be Amos Talele, but he transfers to Kansas State. So one of those backup guys who we talked about will have to emerge just because of numbers purposes at a guard spot. So I think it'll be Micah Banuelos. I could see him being like a swing guard. I know that's not really a term, but like if one of those guys gets hurt, you can put him in, and maybe the staff will get creative. Like Tobias Raymond, I think he's a tackle. He's only ever played tackle, but he's like a competent offensive lineman. If you're in a pinch, could he slide in at guard? Maybe. Some of those other guys I don't quite think are ready to contribute yet, so I'm not really comfortable saying if there was an injury that they would play. To me, it's Banuelos, and then I don't really know what else you have other than being really creative. So I think adding a guard from the portal is paramount.
Yeah, it's never a good sign when you have multiple people listed as the backup for other spots.
Yeah.
Like they're backing up both guard spots or both tackle spots. It's not really what you want. So,
but the tackle depth is solid, I think.
But again, still a little bit young, like Payne and Dunn. And I know Justin Taunau, still super young, though. Still super young. So Tobias Raymond, one career start. I feel like if you were going to bring someone in, you would need another veteran guard, at least maybe just a depth piece, and then another experienced tackle. Not necessarily like a guy who could start for you, but like a guy who has played at the college level more than the guys you have now. I think those would be two things I would want to see them bring in, just for more assurance at both spots, more experience at both spots.
The problem you run into, though, is why would a guard, like if DJ Wingfield plays guard, why would a transfer guard who's worth a damn want to come to USC when they're not going to play unless there's an injury? Like they're kind of in trouble. And that's sort of what it's been like the whole way with Lincoln Riley. Like they didn't bring in that extra offensive lineman last season because it was like, well, ideally we won't need them, but then you do. But if you bring in someone who would take that deal, like I'm not a guaranteed starter, how good is that player?
Yes.
So I think for them to take an established starter, it would have to be at right tackle and someone who would come in and just take the job, unless, of course, Wingfield is the right tackle. Then that would open up as a guard. But as we currently see the offensive line lining up, if you have Alani Noah at left guard, DJ Wingfield at right tackle, everyone on the line is established except for one player, Tobias Raymond, then maybe he's the guy who, if you're recruiting someone, you'd say, look, like this guy doesn't have a lot of starting experience. You can beat him out. I don't know if there's a guy in the portal who would feel comfortable coming to USC who would have to battle Alani Noah, who would have to battle DJ Wingfield if he's a guard. You don't need a center. So if they add someone from the portal, a plug-and-play guy, I think it would have to be a right tackle, but there's so many moving pieces. I hope I'm not confusing people.
Let's move into strength and weaknesses in case you are confusing people. But again, offensive line, this is our biggest preview because there's so many
I love talking offensive line. I always have really enjoyed it.
He knows football. He's a trench guy. What is your strength for this group?
Established left tackle and having a real center are the two strengths. Anything outside of that is a little bit of a projection, I think. Like, do you know for sure Alani Noah is going to take that leap? I think he will, but can you say, like, firmly that'll happen? I don't know. DJ Wingfield, again, I think he's going to be a strength, but I don't know 100%. If him at right guard is going to be fantastic, I think it has the chance to be. But at Purdue, remember, he was sort of up and down last season. That roster was terrible. He'll be playing with a better offensive line. Other teams wanted him, as I've continued to say. So that should be a strength. But like the two things that jump out to me the most, you have your established left tackle in Elijah Page, and you have a real center. You don't need to move guys around, and that should be significant.
Yeah, I have, just to hyper focus it, I have offensive tackle talent because you have a potential, high draft pick in Elijah Page. You have a guy who can play both spots in DJ Wingfield, who could play right tackle in a pinch. You have Tobias Raymond, Justin Taunau. You have Hayden Treater, who I really like, could play both spots. And then you have the 2 4-star guys you signed and brought in. A couple years ago, I don't feel like we were talking about the offensive tackles. Like, it's kind of a question mark. Now you have bodies. You have options. And that was even after losing, like, Mason Murphy and Khalil Ta'aga. You replenish with some talent. So I really like what they're doing at offensive tackle. And I think Zach Hansen has a lot to work with those tackles. But again, that kind of leads into my weakness, which is the guard. Interior depth is kind of iffy for me. I know you have Ja'Henry Reed. I think Keeler O'Connor's a solid backup, but the guards kind of like scare me a little bit, kind of like they scared me last year, and they were lucky they didn't have injuries. But if you get wiped out at that position, like Makai Sena, like Erwin Tayomi, Micah Banuelos, like a lot of unknowns back there at guard.
My weakness is, how is it going to look? Do we know that this group is good? Because in 2023, I fully drank the Kool-Aid, and I was like, okay, you have Michael Tarquin. He's going to come in and be your left tackle. He was at Florida, so he must be good. Florida is usually pretty good. And you got Jonah coming back, and you got Dedich, and you take the Washington State transfer, Jared Kingston, and he gets drafted. So you think, oh, any guy who gets drafted is going to be good. And all of those guys, except for Jonah, were up and down that season, and it just did not work. So if you're a fan right now, like, I don't know how you could possibly say, like, oh, we have a really good offensive line. We have no idea what this group is going to look like right now. And they've had some really good injury luck the past 2 seasons, especially last season. They didn't lose anyone on the offensive line to injury outside of the bowl game. In the regular season, it was the same guys pretty much every game except for the Page benching. Maybe you don't get as fortunate this year. Like, is this a group that can survive an injury? I don't know if it is. The depth is not very good outside of the center spot, and then a tackle, like, it's okay, but you're still relying on some inexperienced guys. And then a guard, it's a total question mark. So, like, it has potential. I'm not saying here on March whatever they're not going to be good, that's a problem, like, sound the alarm, but I'm a little bit afraid of just what it's all going to look like when we've seen USC try to put an offensive line together piece by piece in the past, and it just didn't work.
I think we'll get a lot of questions answered in spring in terms of where guys are playing and how confident they feel. Even in terms of what they say publicly and maybe behind the scenes, we'll get answers, because obviously in terms of all the other positions, this is the one where you have to be like, we need to see what is happening there, because, tight end, we got guys we feel like are going to play. Running back, same thing. Wide receiver, quarterback, Jaden at the top. But offensive line, like, you need to find, especially when we talk offensive line, we usually talk too deep, because, like, those are also very important positions. Like, we need to know what that too deep looks like, because in the bowl game last year, they had like 2 walk-ons as their, like, key backups, and a guy who, like, was injured all year. It was very bad depth-wise. So we need to see what it is reshaped with in spring, and that's going to tell us a lot moving forward of how this year can be on the offensive line for the Trojans.
Mm-hmm. I look at one other point that I made here. Like, it sort of seems like the quarterback room to me, it sort of seems like the receiver room to me a little bit. In year 4 of this regime, you would hope that it would be a little bit better, and you have a stud in Elijah Page, and then where are your studs? You don't really have any other, like, that was a highly ranked recruit. This guy's destined for the NFL. Could John Ray Reed get there? Maybe. Could DJ Wingfield get there? Maybe. Could Tobias Raymond get there? Maybe. Could Alani Noah get there? Maybe. It's not crazy to say that some of those guys could get there, but, like, it's USC. It's a program that just has not recruited at the level that you would expect a USC to recruit at. This line should be full of Elijah Pages. He shouldn't be the outlier.
That's a great point. At this point, year 4, Lincoln Riley, you should have had more established guys along the lines, and you should have had, like, that 5-star guy.
Yeah,
that we're talking about. And
Page, he's not even that, and he's damn good 4-star guy. But, like, look at what some of these players have been able to do. I mean, we talk about Josh Connerly so much. That recruitment hurt, of course, but there are guys, it doesn't always happen, of course, but there are elite guys who can come in and have success as a true freshman on the offensive line, but they're really, really tough to get.
Still chasing the ghosts of Austin Jackson, that last 5-star offensive tackle they signed. Still trying to end that drought of a 5-star blue chip offensive left tackle prospect. So will it happen in 2025? We'll see, but we're seeing it on the field now. It's like, where are the studs, as Connor mentioned. What are those final thoughts for this group, Connor, which is our early starter projections? And in this case, we need the 2 deep. Connor, we need the 2 deep. You can't just do the 5. You need to do the 10.
Do you want to go position by position?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Let's start with the left tackle, because that's kind of easy starting point.
I have it written out here. So, of course, Elijah Page is the starter, and then I have Justin Tawanuu as the backup. Say Page got hurt. Is Tobias Raymond in there? Maybe, but I am pretty confident that Tawanuu would be the backup. And maybe Alex Payne has, like, a huge spring, and maybe it's him. I have him 3rd, so, forget the 2 deep. Let's do a 3 deep, maybe, for the positions that we got him. Question for you before we continue, though. Does Payne project as a left tackle? Does Aaron Dunn project as a left tackle? Do you know, or is it kind of wait and see with both those guys?
I believe Aaron Dunn projects as a right tackle.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
And then
Payne
played left tackle for his high school, which is something Gerard always looks like. Like, where are they playing? Like, are they playing a right tackle? You're trying to make them left tackle? You want to recruit left tackles. So Payne did play left tackle. So he projects as a left tackle for me and Aaron Dunn on the right side.
So I think because of that, Payne makes the 2 deep, or the 3 deep, and could push for the 2 deep. Justin Taonuu, he has the momentum. He had the solid bowl game, but if Payne comes in and just outperforms him, I could see him being the backup left tackle.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. Justin at least earned the right for us to be like, hey, he played in the Las Vegas Bowl, played decently. He, on paper, deserves to be. Would that actually happen in a game? Like, I don't know. But, yeah, at least right now, I feel good about Page, Taonau, and then let's give it to Alex Payne just because.
Yeah, I think that's either the strongest group or the second strongest behind the center group. That it's young behind Page, and Page is only in his 3rd year too. But like, you're not really going to do much better than that. You have the blue chip guy in Payne. You have Taonuu who's played well in his 1 year. Like that's a solid group.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift one more in left guard, which obviously is big shoes to fill with Emmanuel Pregnon gone in an interesting way. But what is your look for the 3 at left guard?
Because DJ Wingfield played right guard at Purdue, I'm moving Alani Noah from right guard to left guard, which is where he played in a limited role as a true freshman. He can do it, so I think he will be the left guard. And then the depth behind him, Chris, right now I have DJ Wingfield as his backup.
Okay.
But if I had to pick someone other than Wingfield, someone who's not a starter, it would probably be Micah Banuelos. But, like, can he play left guard? We don't really know. Maybe it's Erwin Taomi, but he hasn't really sniffed the 2 deep to me, so that would seem like a stretch. I don't really know who the backup is. Do you have a better idea?
I honestly don't. I would probably put Micah Banuelos.
Yeah.
Like, I would put Micah Banuelos because I feel like he's got to be a 2 deep guy for you this year. Like, he's got to be. Like, you need to coach him up, get him ready to be an interior guy. Because, like, that's like the Gino Quinones spot, like a veteran guy. I'm not saying Micah's a veteran, but, like, he's been on the roster several years now. Like, he needs to be in a position where if push comes to shove, you can put him on the field. So I would put Micah Banuelos as kind of that backup spot, whatever you want to do with Wingfield, moving him around. But I think Micah has to be on the 2 deep at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's how I see it too. And another guard coming in to compete certainly wouldn't hurt. At center, Big General Reed is the starter. Killian O'Connor is the backup. And Killian O'Connor, whenever he's come in, has done a really nice job. Yeah. So even though he used to be a walk-on, I feel pretty good about him. And then Willie Washer is that 3rd string, probably a redshirt candidate. We might see him in some of those early games of USC's up big, but I don't expect him to have a role, and he'll probably redshirt.
And I believe actually played center in high school,
yes,
like a Justin Dietich. So you got reps there. I know maybe the Micah Banuelos as a center experiment has flown away. Maybe it's gone. But, yeah, Willie seems like the logical choice for the 30 spot. Let him kind of cut teeth on the 3rd team, scout team, what have you. So that feels like a pretty easy. We're a lockstep there. Let's shift over to the right guard spot, who you made a shift of Alani Noah, and I'm assuming we're going DJ Wingfield here.
Yes, with Alani Noah as the backup, and I feel better about him as the backup because he's actually played that spot. I think it's very similar to left guard, where maybe it's Micah Banuelos behind them, maybe it's Erwin Taomi. Makai Saina, I think, is still a year away, or Saina, excuse me. Maybe he could come in and, I mean, he's a guard, so, like, you need guard bodies, but
he's a year away.
Yeah.
The weight, needs to gain weight.
Yeah.
Like, that's been an issue for him. So maybe he comes out and he's like 320 when he comes out for spring camp, but I'm not banking on that. So he would need still a scout team guy and developmental guy.
Yeah, going through the depth chart, you just see, like, the guard spot, one injury there would really hurt him.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're lockstep there. I will throw Hayden Treater in there. I think he can be a guard. He's a guard. Yeah, I think it's Erwin or Taomi for one of those guard spots. I'm leaning towards Hayden Treater, even though, he missed all of last year. So I like him. 6'6", 320. I like him. So that's going to be one of my picks for a guard spot. this year.
Right tackle, Tobias Raymond right now, and then Wingfield as his backup. But it seems like there's a little bit more depth there where if Tauanuu is the swing tackle, could he come in and help you at right tackle if needed? Potentially, maybe Aaron Dunn gets a shout there. If Treater is moving in a better direction injury-wise and maybe they see him as a tackle, even though he could potentially be a guard, he could be in the mix too. Micah Benuelos, I don't think so, but that's the one position he hasn't played, so maybe we put him there. Get the all 5 boxes checked, but I don't know. It would surprise me if it's either going to be Raymond, Wingfield, or a transfer. I'd imagine.
Yeah, the right tackle is like the key to everything. Like who's going to be there, what's it going to look like? So Tobias, Wingfield, and then I would put Aaron Dunn there as kind of like third string in the bottom. So yeah, that at least they have clear like depth guys at the end with Dunn and Payne, and you can mix around with Wingfield. Because that versatility is nice, and then Tobias, who is more experienced than he was a year ago. So, and if he makes the jump, they're in a pretty good spot. But again, we'll see moving forward. But an interesting depth chart, 3 across the board. But I'm excited to talk about this in fall in several months to see what it actually ended up being in spring camp. But we're going to have our close eye on the offensive line. We do have a question, but we're approaching that 45-minute cutoff point, so we got to knock it out quick. Anthony in LA asks, can Tobias Raymond be an option at left guard? Is there more legitimate young guys that can plug into right tackle? The tape on DJ doesn't stand out as a clear starter. We've kind of been talking about this a little bit. I do think Tobias has potential at guard, but I don't think he's played that a lot. I think he's been mainly focusing on left tackle, right tackle. Justin Tauanau has actually played a little tackle too, and kind of Greg Biggins and them kind of project him as an interior offensive line. So he actually has more potential as a potential guard moving forward. But Tobias Raymond, that's not really been on the docket for him playing guard. It's been mainly setting him up to be a tackle. But again, this is spring, so you can experiment, you can move guys around, you can cross train. So if that happened, I would not be shocked because that's what spring camp's for.
If they do see Raymond as a guard, that would go against pretty much everything that we've seen so far. So it would be a surprise, but I rule nothing out. We're just trying to get the most out of this group. And if he is a guard, then that Wingfield and Raymond position battle, like we all think it might be at right tackle, maybe it's at right guard. That would be interesting. The loser of that battle, though, I don't think would just go to right tackle. In that situation, if those two guys are fighting it out for right guard, you would need to go get a right tackle from the transfer portal. So to answer the question, I don't think Raymond will be an option at guard, but it is possible. Don't rule anything out. Yeah, everything that's happened though with him, he's just been a tackle the whole way, so that would surprise me.
Yeah, that would surprise me as well. I would lean more towards Justin Tauanau getting looks at guard than Tobias Raymond at guard, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the other part of the question?
Is there any other young tackles that can plug into right tackle, which we've kind of mentioned a little bit, Payne, Dunn, if need be, but I think those guys still need some seasoning. It's not like those guys are 5-star guys that could probably play right away. They need some weight gain. Those guys are under 200 pounds, so we'll see what they look like.
Under 300 pounds.
Under 300 pounds, sorry. What did I say?
I was going to, under 200, I was going to say.
190, 6'7", 190, starting at right tackle. Yeah. So they need some development there. But that's what spring is for. So we'll see.
That's what spring's for. But no spring game this year, remember.
Spring showcase.
Yes.
Connor, that is it. We're about to hit the 45-minute mark. I don't want to give anybody money, so we are out. Check us out next week